In this section, Lofink starts out by pointing out that the Bible doesn't begin with the election of the people of God, Abraham and his descendants forever, but with the creation of the world. Adam equals humanity as a whole. Right? And he goes on to point out that everything the Bible goes on to describe is not just the action between God and God's chosen people, but it's aimed towards the nation, the world, the universe, everybody. He quotes Franz Rosenzweig and saying, God did not create religion, but the world. And as universally as the Bible begins, it also ends. Right? So in Genesis 1:1, you have God creating the heavens and the earth. In Revelation 21:1, we have a new heaven and a new earth. Right? And notice in the new heaven and new earth, no sea. Right? Why? What did the sea represent in the primordial time? Chaos. So no more chaos, right? And in this new world, God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes. There shall be no more death, no more neither sorrow nor crying, no more pain. Right? This is a paradise. It's like paradise plus. Right? It's better. We're going to see it's better than the Garden of Eden. Right? It's a development, a progress, an evolution of the Garden of Eden. You know, and there's a new city here, but there's no tower, right? Like the Tower of Babel. You know that story from Genesis 11:1-9, where God scattered the people into different nations. Right? They try to build a tower up to heaven. It doesn't work, right? They have a little too much faith in their own use of their new technology, cutting-edge technology there, bricks. But anyway, the tower collapses and everyone's scattered, and that's the etiology about how we got different languages and different nations and stuff like that. Now in Revelation, which is framed as a vision of the Apostle John, we do have a new city here, a new tower that actually does reach the heavens, right? And it brings people together. It doesn't scatter them. You see, all the nations of the world are going to gather to this city, this new paradise. Right? Again, I've already mentioned this is a city. Right? It's not a garden anymore. Paradise is not going to be seen as a garden. The new heaven, the new earth, is going to be in the image of a city. Right? And it's a big city, right? It's as large as the civilized world that they knew at the time, right? Now, the idea is rooted in these eschatological writings of the Jewish prophets, especially Isaiah. They talked about the reestablishment of Jerusalem in a way that would be a light to the nations. But you also have the influence here of the Hellenistic culture, the Greek culture, that was dominant in the 1st century A.D. when the Revelation of John was formed. And in that culture, the city was the most progressive social structure. That is, the polis, or the city, represented the height of the evolution of society. So it's really playing into that evolutionary view, the idea of development, right? Of creation, but also of society and the human culture. So again, this city was big, right? It converts to about 1,300 miles. There's a cube that would show you the scale. It really would touch the heavens and join heaven and earth. So again, this is quite an impressive vision of what human beings can be, right? What we could be and what we can be. This city is for everybody. It's not just for the Israelites. It's an international city. It's not closed off to anybody. It's got 12 gates that are never closed. It's got see-through walls, and it's the pilgrimage destination. It's the gathering point for all the nations. Now Isaiah had that back in the Old Testament times, but this is going to be a little bit different. This is going to be a little bit even more profound in some ways. Lofink goes on to explain or highlight that the holy city is built of the materials of the world. There's 12 layers of the foundation that are described very specifically by John the Revelator, and they are, they're minerals. These are the pretty rocks of the earth. The metaphor used for the city in the vision is a bride. So that the bride is, the city is prepared as a bride for her husband. It's very beautiful, right? You see the gems that build the foundation of it. A lot of other really aesthetically pleasing things in the city, right? Lofink points out that what they're doing here is they're describing the new paradise, the potential of human development as a feast, right? It's high culture. Again, this is the idea of an evolving society, right? That we grow into this city of God, right? They're in constant communication. It's like a party, and a classy one, so to speak, but it's also a very good party. It's not stuffy, People are actually having a good time. People are actually forgetting about time, like you would at a feast. Right? So it's got all the best of human potential. People coming together and really communing with each other. People being intimate with each other again, right? People aren't ashamed to be there. People are glad to be there, right? People are glad to see each other there. But it's a transcendent experience too, because it transcends time, right? It's like when you're at a good party, you don't know what time it is, right? You forget about that. You might say, "Oh my gosh, it's that time already." That's what's going on here in the heavenly city, right? And the earthly city too, right? It joins heaven and earth. As Lofink puts it, the cosmic rhythms that create time no longer exist, right? You don't need a sun and a moon anymore. You don't have to have night and day, right? The Lamb, right? The risen Christ lights the city. Here's an interesting point Lofink makes here. The city's not in nature. Nature's in the city, right? It's the paradise arises anew, and it's in enhanced form. It's not like the garden that's created, on the earth, of the earth, in the earth, right? No, this new city is like a whole new heaven and a whole new earth. So earth is in the city in a new way, right? There's no tree of life anymore, right? Instead, what do you have? Two rows of trees lining the river. And the leaves of those trees are for the healing of the nations. Right? So Lofink says that the conclusion is that only because society has become whole, nature is also whole and intact and able in turn to heal. Right? It makes sense when you look at environmental issues today. Right? Until societies get together and say, we're going to take care of the earth so that it can sustain life, not just so things are good where I live, but also thinking about people who are living in the vulnerable areas, right? Also not just thinking about, hey, how I'm doing now, but also thinking about future generations, right? So in other words, responding to others, right? Treating others not as competition or as a threat, but as brother and sister, right? As the beloved, right? As a community at a wedding feast, right? People usually getting along pretty good there, right? The thing that differentiates this eschatological city from the eschatological cities of the Old Testament prophets is that this city in the vision of John the Revelator is doesn't have a temple, right? The city of Ezekiel was all about the temple, but this city doesn't need a temple because God lives in it, right? I mean, the function of the temple, what's the function of the temple? It housed the Shekinah, it housed the glory of God. But you don't need to have that if you have God himself living in the temple, living in the city, right? So they don't need a temple, right? God is the temple. It'd be like you don't need a cell phone to talk to your friend if your friend's right there. Right? Think about it in the Garden of Eden. It seemed like Adam and Eve would, hear God's footsteps. When after they ate from the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, they hear God's footsteps. Made it seem like the story seems like he was often around where they could, hear him and he would kind of hang out with them in the day, and they would talk to him. And they could hear him, but they didn't see him. This is a big theme in the Old Testament. No one can see God and live. And so that bridge is also, that gap is also bridged in the New Jerusalem, right? In John's vision here. In John's visions, they don't just see or they don't just hear God's footsteps or his voice. They see God face to face, right? There's a whole new world. Everything's transformed. Everything's different. Everything is different in the new city. You see the realization, the vision of the realization of human potential, right? We see the freedom used in a way that it creates paradise, right? But not, going back to a primordial paradise, but evolving to a paradise city. Or as he puts it, right? It describes the perfection of creation and depicts it as a new society. And notice, this is not a catastrophe. This isn't end of the world in the rapture idea, which, by the way, is only 100 years old. But it's building a city of God. It is a new society that is a gift from God, but comes about through the development of human society, through the evolution of creation, which those societies are part of, and through human cooperation, right? The human freedom and choice to trust each other, right? To trust that God is working something good in this messy world. So John's vision shows that God cares for everybody, right? And not just in individuals, but society, right? And not just for the soul, right? We're not just going out trying to save souls, right? We're helping people, right? It's actually for matter, for culture, for history, everything in the world. Everything's included in the new creation, right? God loves holistically. So the vision of St. John the Revelator shows that God desires the salvation of the whole world. But how is he going to succeed in that desire? Right, how's he going to make that happen? Well, Lofink says the key is look at the city itself. It's all 12s, right? 12 gates with 12 angels on them, 12 names of the 12 tribes of Israel. You have the 12 foundational stones with the 12 names of the apostles on them. The city, he says, is nothing other than the restored people of the 12 tribes. Right? The 12 apostles are the new 12 tribes of Israel. Right? The people of God in its eschatological perfection. Right? Now the thing about this eschatological end, right, the potential of the human development that engulfs all people, all nations, is that it's bound to a particular people in a particular time and place, the 12 tribes of Israel and its history, right? And he points out that's tough. That's a stumbling block for us. That's hard to get, right? We kind of want to say, wait a minute, about everybody, so then, you know, it's tied to everybody. Why these special people, right? That kind of, when we have the universal vision for us, that's kind of hard to see how that goes with a kind of special group or a group that is set aside, right? There seems like in our contemporary heads a clash there, and so that's why, you know, he calls it a stumbling block and gives us a nice little cliffhanger for the next section.